Okay, so I see that it's the top of the hour and we have a good number of participants. If you'd like to, you're welcome to continue putting where you're joining from in the chat. Hello, my name is Kristen Weaver. I am the Deputy Coordinator for the Globe Observer Project based at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland. Thank you for joining us for our Globe Observer Connect this evening. Just a notice that we are recording this session and we will put a recording up on our website afterwards. So if you don't want your face or your voice to be on the recording, keep your video off. And if you want to ask questions, you can put them in the chat. But otherwise, just be aware that we're recording. And so this evening, we're really excited to hear about NUBE, a Globe Clouds game. And we're going to hear from Rosalba Giarantano, an outreach coordinator with the Langley Globe Clouds team, although she's based in New York, as well as Alex Hernandez Bonifacio, who was part of, I believe, part of the inspiration. We're going to learn about how this game got started. And then Heather Mortimer, who's on the Globe Observer team, also at NASA Goddard, who's going to talk a little, who did the graphic design and the art. So without further ado, I will pass it off to whichever of you three is going to start things off. Oh, I guess I should say, I think they have a bit of a presentation, but then we'll have time for questions and things afterwards, because we do like to have these be a conversation. But I think they have a few slides and a few things to show us to begin with.
Yes, thank you, Kristen. I am going to start. So I will tell you a little bit about the basics of the game, and then my colleagues are going to share more about how the game evolved. So first, nube is the Spanish word for cloud. And the idea came up because we were trying to find a way to engage learners of all ages. And so we think that games can do that. Games can bring together friends and families. And so, so we came up with this idea to have this card game to help people learn to identify different types of clouds. We know that that is very important, very helpful for scientists, but identifying cloud types could be tricky in the beginning. So that's how we came up with this idea for this game. And so basically, to win the game, you have to get rid of all your cards, and you do that by matching cloud types and or shades of blue. So when you make a Globe Clouds observation, you pay attention to many things, not just the cloud type, but also the color of the sky. And so that's how you're also going to be matching shades of blue with the game. There are also some special cards, such as rainmakers and mystery cards, that are going to have people perform different actions. So, for example, some players will have to describe a cloud by making a quick sketch or even through movement. So something also very special about the development of this game of NUBE is that this was done as a collaboration between the NASA Globe Clouds team and Queen's Public Library. So first, the NASA Globe Clouds team introduced staff at different branches of Queen's Public Library to the Globe program, to Globe Clouds, to the Globe Observer app. And then the staff at these different branches of Queen's Public Library were kind enough to test our very first version of the game, a very non-fancy version of the game done with Word, with different groups of people of different ages. And then they provided us with very, very thorough, helpful feedback to make many improvements to the game. And to talk more about that, I will pass the microphone to Alex.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Alex. I am an early learning educator at the main central branch of the Queen's Public Library. It's located in Jamaica. And one of the benefits of having a game like this being tested there is that we get a variety of age groups from, our main audience, which is from 0 to 13. So teenage, like children and preteens. We also sometimes get the wonderful siblings that are there to supervise. And when the game was first, when I first heard of the game, I thought it would be really, really fun for us to do it because we're always trying to bring new things and actually do continuous games. And NUBE was like the perfect activity to do that. So the first time it was tested out I tested it with a 4 to 8 8-year-old group and an 8 to 13-year-old. And some of the designs that you can see are, very simple, very straightforward, which is good for me. But when you try to like teach sort of complex concepts as are clouds, it proved to be a little difficult for them to actually kind of get excited about what a cloud was, and sometimes even confusing with the names, which is, totally understandable. I'm still struggling to say alto cumulonimbus. I think it's the right cloud. So it was definitely like a learning curve for the children as well as for us. And the main thing that they noticed was the icon design was like a little difficult for them to kind of get a grasp on it. So that was one of the things I passed along to Rosalba, and then including other things included like the terminology, which, like I mentioned, is really hard, but just kind of having the patient and constantly repeating the cloud names and sort of like what they look like was really helpful. Um, and then the game itself plays out kind of like a very famous game that we might already know of, which is Uno. So I kind of try to use some of the kids already knew Uno, so I try to kind of leverage off of that and say, hey, like you played this game before, you had a lot of fun doing that. Let's see how this can, maybe be similar to it with the twist of learning. So different additions were made to the game eventually as well, like the rainmakers have like the skip ability or like the orientation switch, which is actually really, really smart. I'm not quite sure who added that, but great addition, because that actually really let the kids kind of get excited for one, skip, you know, the friend, or like make the game more interesting. But also I started to notice that the rainmaker clouds actually were like staying in their heads, and they were actually able to memorize the names and able to identify them, even just like identify which feature they were doing just by looking at the cloud name, which was a really great thing to see. And in the original game, there was also a really interesting card, which was the Stratus dance, which I don't think I understood all the way either. So I'm not sure that I did it successfully. But what the kids did share was is that they didn't necessarily feel as comfortable because at the library, they're not playing with their best friends. They are friends, but it's like, kids that they probably just met. So it was something that they weren't necessarily excited about or interested in doing. Which that I think eventually turned into the mystery card, which I'm also a huge fan of because now kids get to either sketch it, describe it with words, or do a movement. And you're gonna be surprised at all the kinds of movement kids are gonna do for clouds, which I think is my favorite part, especially the smaller ones, because they do exactly as they see it. So it's really, really cute. Um, and yeah, and then I shared all of this feedback um, to Rosalba, and then we had different meetings from like what design looked better. I was able to kind of give my feedback on the designs, so I was very appreciative of all of that. And at the end of the day, our goal is to get kids excited into looking at the sky and identifying clouds, and also eventually adding the information to the site, which I'm getting the name of right now. And I think that through this game, that is definitely you can definitely see a fire being ignited for interested in clouds, especially when they realize that clouds, um, you know, are things that they can go outside and observe. Especially on our branch, we're very lucky to have a very tall window. So sometimes while we're playing, I'll like after we're done playing, I'll ask them to go outside and see if they can identify it. And after playing a few times, they definitely kind of get competitive to see who can identify it the best. So yeah, that is some of that.
Great. So I think I'm up next. My name's Heather Mortimer, and I was the graphic designer that took Rosalba's early prototype deck and turned it into what it is now. So do you mind taking us to the next slide? Awesome. So to start out, I created a few different options. And for each of those, I did the back of the card and one example card. And so the first option had these like bold colors, heavy outlines, and really stylized art that's very similar to other card games you might see out there. The second option primarily used photos, and then because cloud or sky color was a major part of the gameplay, I figured the best approach would probably be to make the photos black and white and make the border the sky color. Um, and then the third option was this more hand-drawn look that was inspired by Elementary Globe. Um, and so Rosalba actually reached out to all of the librarians and other people who had helped with the early play testing, and presented them with these options. And so they voted, and option one is the one that won. And so that's what all of the cards are based on. Next slide, please. There were a few challenges that came up while designing the art for all of the cards. So I created new art for all of the cloud types, as well as the obscurations. And Stratus was probably one of the trickiest ones to work on. As many of you may already know, Stratus at different heights, so that's stratus, altostratus, and cirrostratus, they can all look very similar to each other. But one way that you can tell the difference is based on how the sun looks when it's behind those clouds. So the lower stratus and nimbostratus, they might completely block out the sun. Um, Behind altostratus, the sun might look a little fuzzy. And then behind cirrostratus, often a halo forms around the sun. And this is, just an obligatory reminder to not look directly at the sun. I'm talking about like if you took a photo of the cloud with the sun behind the cloud. Um, those are some of the different ways that the sun might appear depending on the height of the cloud. Um, of course, from a design perspective, the way that we normally represent the sun is this usually, a yellow circle with yellow or orange spikes around the outside. And that's just not really what the sun looks like when we're talking about a realistic representation of the sun. Um, and so it was a little challenging to find the right way for the sun to look that people would know that it was the sun, or at least sort of like it wouldn't be too surprising once someone pointed out that it was the sun, um, while also being true to how the sun looks behind different types of clouds. And so an earlier version there was a black outline around the sun to match the way the clouds are stylized. And that just wasn't really coming across to people as the sun. People just kind of thought it was a random dot in the middle of the cloud. And so after testing a few more designs, what we landed on was just a white circle. And then for the halo, another larger white outline circle. Next slide, please. The next thing to design were the wild cards. And so in one of the early prototype decks, the wild cards were just this gray card with the Globe Clouds logo. And so I was really thinking about what sort of art to put on these cards. Like what cloud related thing would work for a wild card. And that's where I came up with the idea to turn those cards into obscurations. So if you've done a globe clouds observation before, you can report that there's something blocking your view of the sky, whether that's smoke, dust, sand, sea spray, even heavy rain, to say, there may be clouds up there, but I can't see them because there's something blocking my view of the sky. And so that turned into 8 unique cards, which are the obscuration cards. And in the game, it's a wild card. You can play it after any other card, but because it blocks your view of the sky, the next player actually has to draw 2 cards. So that became a draw 2 card. Next slide, please. And then hopefully a lot of you have gotten a chance to check out NUBE and maybe even print your own copy of the game. But we did a lot of testing and consideration of how to make the game work well, considering that people have all sorts of different printers, different paper, settings change, and what have you. And so some things that you might notice that were different from some of the earlier slides is that on the back, we actually added a repeat pattern, which works sort of like the security pattern that's inside of envelopes, you know, that like blue and white pattern. Because printer paper is thin, even cardstock, if you're holding it up in a bright room, sometimes you can see through it, which is not very good for a card game. So we added that pattern to the back. Because two-sided printing doesn't always align perfectly, we remove some of the edge-to-edge color that was on there's a direction tracker that has a hurricane icon, because hurricanes spin in a different direction depending on which hemisphere they're in. And then while we did provide instructions for creating your own box for the game, here's what it looks like. Recognizing that some people might not want to go through the work of printing their own box and assembling it, we created an instruction card so that you have the same information that's on the back of the box as a card in the deck. And so next slide, please. So if you're interested in printing a copy for yourself, you can scan this QR code or go to observer.globe.gov/NUBE-game. And everything you need's there, the print files, the instructions, and even a cloud chart that is specifically for this game. And so that's all I have. I think we can take questions now.
Excellent, thank you. And I did put the link, this URL in the chat as well, if you want to just click on it. So maybe we can leave it up for a minute longer and then stop share so we can see each other a little bit more easily. But I want to start with a question. And yeah, if you have questions, please either raise your hand or put them in the chat. Rosalba, it sounds like you were the inspiration for this. Where did you get the idea? Because you didn't talk about that in your presentation. Where did the idea for doing this NUBE game come from?
I mean, I was actually talking to a friend about like really like ideas of how to like engage people, and she's the one that mentioned like games, you know, and I was like, oh yeah. And then my son, so I have a teenage boy, and he has loved Uno all his life, and so yeah, so I just thought like, hey, like that's colors, that's like, I mean, in the case of Uno it's numbers, but like why not cloud types, shades of blue, and then just add some, you know, some other twists, you know. But yeah, that's how it came.
Just because you love cloud so much that you couldn't resist doing a game, right? Now, this is a question right for Heather. Will you consider creating a short video to teach how to play the card game?
Yes, in fact, I am working on an instructional video. My computer's not loving video editing right now, but hopefully it will be done very, very soon. And we'll get it posted on the website and at that observer.globe.gov/NUBE-game URL. But yes, video coming very soon.
So yes, that is planned. Here's another question from Janine. Will you be making other games, maybe for the different globe spheres? I mean, we just finished this one, so you know, you have to give us time to do things like finish the videos. But I don't know. Have you thought about other games as you were working on this one and said, oh, it'd be neat to do this, but can't fit it into NUBE?
So when I was just starting with NUBE, I did share it with somebody at another NASA center, and he was mentioning like, yeah, like maybe making something, I think like also had to do like with matching, but like you had to find an image quickly that could potentially work for land cover. But yeah, like you said, we just finished this one, so so we need some time.
But it's a good idea. I think games are a good way to teach people, not just kids, but to teach people different concepts. And so I think one of the things that works out well for this is because you've got the categories of clouds as well as the sky color. So it has sort of you have different ways you can match cards. And so I think this works particularly well for this version of the game. And Janine says she loves this idea and uses games a lot in her classroom. And using Candyland to walk her class through their globe projects. That's fun. And so a question from Jacqueline about purchasing card decks. This is not a game that's for sale, as noted, that you can go to the website and print them. I think, Rosalba, are there going to be any opportunities through the Globe Clouds team at Langley to request cards being sent, or through any of the libraries?
Yeah, so we have distributed some of the card decks to libraries. I think there will be opportunities for educators to also request some copies for as long as domestic shipping is available. So basically within the US, because that would be our constraint there. Yeah, we just have to figure it out. So yes, I do think there will be some opportunities.
And I think these next two are both more for Heather. Any tips for printing? This is from Holly. Any tips for printing so the cards are durable and easy to play? And also, as part of this, could this game work if printed in black and white, since not everybody may have access to a color printer?
Yeah, so I think Kristen actually helped me a lot with some of this testing. We tried a lot of different combinations of laminated, non-laminated, cardstock, non-cardstock. And the combination that seemed to work the best was regular printer paper that's then laminated. If you did cardstock and then laminated, they were basically impossible to shuffle. And so I don't recommend that. If you don't have a laminator, you can buy card sleeves online. They're basically little plastic pouches that you can slip paper into. And so if you don't have a lamination machine, card sleeves might be a really good option for preserving your cards as long as possible. In terms of printing in black and white, so the sky color is written on every card because they are pretty similar. You might know this probably from doing a globe clouds observation, that the sky color, as Kristen's holding up, is written at the top. And so I think you could play it in a black and white copy. It would be a little hard to distinguish between the colors just by looking at it, but you can still read the top. And you could potentially even color them, I think. But yeah, I think it would work. I think it would work in black and white, maybe with some modifications.
But that's a great idea, actually, of coloring them, because I think if you print them in black and white, you'll end up with some of the gray in the background. And so they'd still, like, if you use the same, even if you use the same color, blue colored pencil, for example, you might end up with enough difference to make it work out well. And I would say in that case, you probably want to use something like colored pencils and not markers, just so it doesn't bleed through. But I'm also going to one of the things that Heather worked on, especially with the design elements, and one of the reasons you'll see some slight differences between the official printed card decks and the DIY ones, the do-it-yourself ones, is that she changed some of the time. So I'm thinking, for example, like on this one, which is like the reverse, like the order of play card. For the official printed one, it's all the colors all the way to the edge. But there's the one for the do-it-yourself. So it doesn't matter if it doesn't line up as much perfectly around the edges. So Heather did put a lot of thought into how to make the cards work, even if your printer doesn't align quite right front and back. So I think you shouldn't have a problem with doing that. And also, if you do have any issues with printing them, find any challenges, let us know, because we might be able to add additional instructions or make some tweaks to the online version. That's very easy to do. And there are a few comments in here about excited to have really interested in what this game would be like and excited to start playing it. I like how creative and educational this game is, and love the development and the presentation. Good job, everyone. And from Ricky, card games is a great way for kids to learn. And Ricky created a card game to teach kids to learn planets, and another one on constellations. And Ricky's students love those. And Adrian, it would be fun if this game inspires kids to make their own card games. Maybe Heather can make a video about how she created the cards also. Yeah, I think that's fun. There was actually a question earlier in the chat that I am going to actually modify a little bit. The question was about how to be able to work at NASA. But what I want to ask all three of these folks is not that specifically, but sort of how you got to the job that you have, and just tell a little bit, just, sort of briefly, sort of how you got where you are now, for Alex, Heather, and Rosalba.
Okay, I can start. So I started really with an internship. And it is actually something that I like telling the students that I reach, that I got my first internship at NASA because I can speak and write Spanish, like read and write in Spanish, because they needed to do some, some engagement, outreach in Spanish. So that is how I got my first internship at NASA. And from there, I just got another internship and another internship until I found this job. So yeah, a lot of perseverance.
Yes. Alex or Heather?
I can go next. So I am an early learning educator at the Queens Public Library, and I've been working with kids since I was a kid myself. I've been like a camp counselor. I've taught a bunch of different like smaller classes, and then one of my best friends actually worked with the exhibits coordinator at the library, and they have this beautiful program called Storytime Science, which was founded by the Franklin Institute. And so our goal is to essentially bring science to both family and early learners, like in very accessible, very easy, very simple, but also very educational way. So we read a book and then we do a hands-on activity with like everyday items. And somehow, some way, I met her boss. Her boss really liked the way I talked. She thought that I engaged really well with her, and then she saw me talking to like my friend's little sister, and then they needed a person, and then here I am, 2-3 years later. So.
And Alex, do you have a degree in early childhood education, or?
No. So when I got hired, I was still in college, human biology. I'm actually in nursing school right now, so this is a part-time job, but teaching and science, making science accessible has always been something that I'm very interested in. And I think that this partnership with Rosalba has been wonderful, because I'm all about making any sort of education accessible. And I think that through NUBE, it will be accessible to people of all ages, of all backgrounds. So I'm just very grateful to be working alongside her.
And before we go to Heather, Rosalba, what is your educational background? What did you study?
It's all over the place. I first did electronics engineering, then information systems, then a master's in bilingual childhood education, and now I'm doing my doctorate in education. So
yeah, good variety. And Heather?
Yeah, so I in high school did a really cool, it was like a volunteer program at the local aquarium, and I was having a really hard time deciding what I was going to do after high school. I was really interested in teaching. I loved doing art. I was also very interested in science, and I was having a hard time sort of figuring out how to reconcile that. And one of the mentors in the program was like, well, who do you think designs the exhibits? And I was like, oh, like there are absolutely opportunities to combine like science, education, and art all together into one thing. And so I was very fortunate to go to a college that actually offered a program where you could essentially make up your own degree. So you chose classes from their course catalog, combined them together, and then it went before a committee to be approved and turned into a degree program. And so I created a degree called Science Communication. And at some point while I was in college, I saw a job for a NASA contract position in our internal job system, which was with a program called the Applied Remote Sensing Training Program. And so that's a NASA project that helps people learn how to use remote sensing data for things like land management, disaster response, water resources management, stuff like that. And so I was doing communications work for them, and then transitioned into this role doing pretty similar stuff, but for a very different project.
And so I think that fits very well with a comment that Adrian made in the chat. This project is a great example of STEAM education, connecting science, STEM, and arts. And I agree. And Holly commented that both Alex and Rosalba got into their jobs through volunteer work or internships. I think that's maybe part of the answer to the original question of how do you get almost any job. Some of it is about looking for something that's an internship or something that's maybe not a full-time thing, volunteering, and then that can lead into, and in Heather's case too, it was one position that then led to another one when we snapped her up for Globe Observer, and are extremely happy that we did so. So we're past our half hour, and I don't see any more outstanding questions in the chat. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. Watch for that how-to video. We hope you go and try the game. And again, if you have any suggestions or thoughts or things that you see that are to improve things, or shoot us your ideas for the next game. And I think, Holly, do you want to talk about next month's Go Connect?
I do. That's why I came off mute. Our next Globe Observer Connect, if you enjoyed this session this evening, please join us next time. It's on July 17th, which is also a Thursday. It's at noon Eastern time. I think that translates to 1600 UTC for our international community. And that topic next time will be artificial intelligence in Globe, and different ways that artificial intelligence is enhancing Globe. So it'll be a very different type of conversation, but also quite interesting. So I hope that you can join us.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful evening or rest of your day, depending on your time zone. Take care.